welcome back to Campaign Terrain. Today, we're going to be talking about piles of pillars. We're going to show you how to make these simple pillars that take almost no time. It's going to take way longer for the video than it does to actually make the pillar. I apologize about the video length, but I promise the pillars will go quickly. Once again, I am your resident basement dweller, your host for the show, That Guy Cross. So we're going to show you all these pillars in example, but this one right here, I'm actually going to build during the video today. I'll make about 6 of those. We'll get a chance to show you all those, and we'll be right back with you. Stick with you. There's going to be a little pop-up here that tells you what you're going to need for today's show, supplies and materials, and then I'll be right back to tell you how to do this stuff. Thanks for coming to Campaign Terrain. I'll see you in just a minute. Right, so let's talk about the foam we're going to be using first. This is called EVA, ethyl vinyl acetate. The most common forms of this are, is it craft foam from the crafting store, fabric store. It comes in all sorts of different colors. It's usually 2mm, but you can get it in thicker sizes like this right here. This is 5mm. You see the difference in those? And like I said, it comes in like 100 different colors. But the other common way it's known is floor mat with this pattern on it. And this is used in like people's workshops so that they comfort their feet. Sometimes you see it in brighter colors for yoga mats, workout mats, things like that. And this has to be crafted at a much higher temperature than the XPS, and it is a lot harder to texture. Like using a brush or things like that make it very difficult. I do have a piece that's got a bit of a texture in it, but you can see how hard I had to work to it. And that is this one right here. And I had to really gouge that with a steel wire brush. And then I tried to come across it to make a little bit of cross grain to it. That's not gonna happen. This is very tough to actually texture. It is designed to be rugged, and that's exactly what it does. Be aware that if you're trying to craft certain heights of things or thicknesses of things, that you're going to need to be aware that these do come in different thicknesses. So these are both the same style of cross-hatched pattern on them, but they are 2 different thicknesses. One's about 10mm, one's about 12mm, and they come anywhere from 8 to 15. You just need to be aware of that if you're trying to make your scales match up or gauges match up. Alright, so I'm going to get rid of some of these and move to having this lined up where I can show you how to cut it, and I'll be right back. Alright, on to cutting. You can use a knife or you can use a pair of scissors. Just be aware that if you cut it with a pair of scissors, sometimes the edge does get a bit of a jagged texture on it, and so I typically don't use the scissors. I'm not even going to show that just because I'm used to using the knife. Now, if you're wanting a nice straight edge, which we are, we're going to want all of our pieces to be the same width. So you want to start with one size so that you can accurately judge from there. Know that this edge is fairly straight, but these are going to, the little puzzle piece edges are going to get in our way. So what I'm going to do is use this edge instead, the one inside the puzzle edge. I'm going to line it up with one of the lines on my cutting mat, and then I'm going to cut a straight line across and just take these pieces off. Normally I would do that. In fact, what I'm going to do is go the other way. I'm going to go to the other side and cut, so I'm just cutting a strip off of where I've already cut. But just be aware that I'm lining this side up, and then I'm getting this side, which I already know is crooked. I'm going to get as close to one of these lines as I can. Then I'm going to use this line to line up to make sure that I'm square, and then I'm going to cut off this way, and that'll give me a straight edge, and then I'll cut my widths. So let me run through that real quick and show you how that's done. This is lined up here on a line. This is over an edge here. I want to make sure it's going to be nice and smooth. Now I'm kind of working backwards here. This is the left side, so take a straight edge to it. See if I can even do this left-handed. It's an experiment. Now, you want to keep your blade as perpendicular, as horizontal, vertical as possible, so you get a nice clean edge on it. So I'm just going to line up my blade and eyeball it to that line and run right down here. Now you're going to want to make several passes on this, and you want to keep your blade nice and low. You should be able to see in the camera how low an angle I'm going at that. And the reason for that is that it gives a nice smoother cut. If you cut with a really steep angle, you get jagged tears. Alright, and you're going to want to make several passes. The rubber is really tough. By the way, if you're used to using other foams like XPS and such, just be aware that this foam will dull your blade much, much faster. All right, that took about 3 passes. Got a little strip there. Toss that off. Now, that's going to give me there's a couple little blemishes, but that's basically a nice straight edge. Now I'm going to start from there, and I'm going to work across to get, now let's talk about scale to show you what I'm doing. As I've said before, if you've been watching some of my other videos, my scale is typically 6/4 inches. That's 1.5 inches is my normal square. I don't go with a grid system normally, but I prefer to use an 1.5 inches. So I'm looking to make pillars that will sit in that 1.5 inch type square. I've got some more intricate ones there. I've got some more basic ones here, but those are 1.5 inches wide. So I'm going to be making some 1.5 inch bases. Now this piece is 1.25 inches across, so that's what most of my uprights are going to be. But I do sometimes make them smaller for different style pillars. So these are 1 inch, and then the base is 1.25 inches. So these are slightly smaller. And I could, and may, in fact, come along at some other point and put these on a larger base to give it a stair-stepped effect. But for right now, I'm going to be cutting, I'm going to make a cut on here of 1.25 inches. So I'm going to start with a bunch of the upright pieces that you can see on these. And so I'm going to cut 1.25 inches, and I'll show you that. After that, I'm going to cut a bunch more and then cut some 1.5 inch pieces for bases, and I'll be right back. But first, let me show you, I'm going to cut 1.25 inch strip real quick. Right-handed this time. Now I'm not lining this edge up, I'm lining this edge up, the one we just cut. And follow my lines on my grid. Close as I can, doing a pretty good job of eyeballing here. All right. Inch and a quarter strip. I'm going to cut a bunch more and I'll be right back. As I'm cutting those, before I jump and have them cut, I'm going to show you a really quick tip on how to cut a bunch of them faster. Now I'm going to measure this one at 1.25 inches. I'm going to use it to gauge the rest of them. I'm going to place it here against this edge, and then I'm just going to use the blade and follow it across. So that'll help you cut a lot more. Now, you don't want them to continue to get like a little bit larger and a little bit larger, so you want to keep using the same one as your gauge. That ensures that each of the ones after that are the same width. So that's just a little tip for you. Alrighty, I'll be right back. Alright, I'm back. As you can see, I cut a bunch of pieces. These are the 1.25 inches for the uprights. These are the 1.5 inches for the bases. And I'm actually going to put tops on these pillars, so these are tops as well. These are some samples so I can show you some ways to get the brick pattern into them. I have replaced the blade on my knife because, as I said, the rubber really dulls the blades down quickly, so I did that. And you don't need the next part, but it makes it much simpler for me. I also have 2 trays. The reason I have these is just to divide up when we get to the patterning, which ones are the lefties, which ones are the righties, and which ones are the bases. Now for mine, for simplicity's sake, I always make the bases righties. That means I put the groove on the right hand side, the slit that would be between the bricks. So my bases are righties, and my first brick is always going to be a lefty, and then I can alternate them through, and I'll show you there's 2 easy ways to take care of that. One when you're cutting the groove into it, and one when you're stacking them. So let's jump right into that. Let me get these divided up, get them separated out to where you start with that, and I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. I've got my bases in one tray. I've got the pieces that will become my righties in the second tray, and then I've got the lefties out by themselves. I'm going to show you how to cut the different patterns, and then we'll go into assembling them, but this section's just going to be on cutting them. Now there's 4 ways that you can do this. There's probably 100 ways you can do this, but there's 4 ways that I do on a regular basis, and I will show you the 3 that I have discarded and no longer do anymore, and then I will go to the one that I find the easiest. First off, you have a blade. You just take a blade. I don't know how well I'm going to be able to show this with my hand in front. But okay, you are almost always going to be cutting toward yourself, so this is dangerous to begin with. But all you want to do is cut in at a very shallow 45-degree angle, and then you want to come the other way and cut the other 45-degree angle, and what you're left with is a little sliver that pops out like that. I don't know if you can see that. And it leaves a groove like that, and then you can do that fairly quickly, and you just stick with it and bear through it, and you'll come up with your different bricks with their little brick patterns in your slabs. So that's with the blade. Next, we've got the sanding. Now, you can simply fold a piece of sandpaper in half and use the edge to sand along that side and get the same groove, but what I do, for lots of different reasons, I have these sanding sticks. This one's a paint stirrer, but any straight flat stick will do. A tongue depressor, a piece of lath wood, whichever. And put the sandpaper on it. This is a fairly rough grit, and all you have to do to get the grit in it, same with the blade, you want to come in at a 45-degree angle, just a couple of passes, and I always like to go both sides, and that way that leaves you a cut like that, and you can do the same thing, and it's actually a little faster than the blade because you don't have to worry as much about cutting yourself, so you can just get right in there and do the grooves. Now, the reason I have stopped doing this one is you're never going to get them uniform. A lot of times you end up looking really bumpy or rough. They don't look like the edge of a brick, and also it generates a large quantity of dust. So that's why I've discarded it. I'm just tired of always having to wear the breather, and the way I'm going to show you at the end also requires a breather, but the process takes a lot less time, so you're not breathing in. Plus, there's no cleanup afterwards. With this, you have to sweep up the dust on it, so you're wearing a breather through the whole process. So you can do that with a sanding stick or a piece of sandpaper. Just be aware of the dust and needing a breather for it. The third way, if anybody out there is a LARPer or a cosplayer, you probably already know the next way. And it's just to take a blade, but don't cut in the 45 degrees. Simply, you slit and then take a basic heat gun. A hairdryer probably won't do it. They don't really get that hot, but a heat gun will do it. This one's 2 temp. I've got the low temperature and a high temperature. The low temp, it takes a long time to do it, and the high temp, it gets very, very hot. I'm just tired of burning my hand trying to do it that way. When you're holding something this small and fiddly in front of the heat gun, your hand is right in the way. You're going to victimize yourself. So that's why I don't do that one anymore. I'm not even going to show you that one, but I will show you how it turns out. This is with a blade. I don't know how well you can see that, but those are the ones with the blade, where they're cut in at the 45-degree channels. This is with the sanding brick. As you can see, they don't make as good and clear a channel. It's a little bit harder to get a good even space on that. And this is the one with the heat gun. You notice it changes the texture of the brick. It curls up the sides a little, shrinks them up, makes them a little shinier. All of that I like. I'm just tired of burning myself. So this is what it looks like after you've cut it and hit it with a heat gun, and it only takes a few seconds and it widens out like that. So this is very efficient, and if you've got one of those gloves that protects your hands from heat, or if you can just take the heat, more power to you, but I don't do them that way anymore. This is a type of hot knife that uses this rod rather than a whole loop of wire or a long straight wire between 2 points. This has a shaft of metal that gets hot, and it only takes a few seconds. Notice how cold this is? I'm going to turn that on, and in about 15 or 20 seconds that's already going to be hot enough, and I'll show you how well that works. I'm going to use one of these. I'm trying to get close, but my autofocus is being weird today. So this should already be hot enough. Then you just take it, press it against the foam, and slide it back and forth, and it leaves a little groove like that. Now, If you're doing a bunch of these, you're going to want your breather on. The only reason I'm not using my breather right now is to show this to you and explain it to you, and I'm only doing the one cut. Now I'm going to put my breather on. Give me just a second, and I will show you how quick and easy this is. Now these usually come with a little rack to sit them on. I'm going to sit it on it so to make sure that the hot part is up so I don't melt my cutting board, any of my rubber that I don't want to, my plastic trays, me, anything like that. So I'm going to sit that on the rack. Let me get my breather on and I will be right back. Got my breather around my neck. I'm going to strap it over my head in just a second, but I'm going to tell you what I'm doing first, and then I'll go through one process of it, and then I'll come back and show you and re-explain again. These are all my lefties. These need to be cut upside down. By upside down, I mean the side with the pattern or the side that you've considered the bottom. You're going to want to be holding away from you so that the bottom is away from you. That way when you cut a groove on this right side, that's because I'm right-handed. You want to do all of this backward if you're left-handed. I'm going to cut on this side so I keep it away from my fingers. So I want my left side to be with the bottom that direction. For the righties, it's the other way. I want to take those, line them up into, even them up, and I want those with the bottom toward me. Now I'm going to go ahead and do this. First I'm going to slide my mask on, and then I'll show you what I'm talking about. So these are my righties. Okay, breather on for safety. Lining these up. Just press them down. Press them the other way. Now they're lined. You want to hold them in place. Take the rod. It's really hot by now, so you want to be really careful. This is really, really quick. And that's it. You got a line in it sometimes. Need to even it out a little. Upside down. I'm going to let these fumes clear out, then I'll take my breather off and be right back. Okay, while I was off camera, I got all of those done. These are all my righties, these are all my lefties. Now, the bases and tops, I made a decision while I was off camera. I'm going to do these differently than my old ones. So instead of having a brick-type slab on them with the groove in it like this, I left them blank. I'm just going to have a solid stone slab for my base. So I'm going to show you how the quick way to put these together, and then we should be pretty well close to done. Now I'm going to want each of these to have 6 sections between and then a slab on top, and that's going to give me approximately 4 inches in height. So I'm going to put 6 pairs, or 6 slabs, excuse me, 7 slabs, let's do my math right, 7 slabs between, and I'll show you there's a quick way to do that. So I want 7 total. I'm going to start this one on lefties. So I need 4 lefties and 3 righties. One of the lefties we're going to leave off to the side for a second. Now we want to take one of each, a lefty and a righty. We're going to take our preheated hot gun. You can use any glue you want. It does not matter. Whichever one you find convenient. I am impatient all day long, every day. So I go with the hot glue. You can use the super glue, you can use the white glue, does not matter. Now if you use a hot glue, you don't want to use much, because if you do too much, you'll end up with a bunch of gaps between your layers. So this is a lefty, and then I take a righty, put them together, make sure they alternate, squish down while the heat gets a chance to bond up. And what that's going to give you is a little cube of 2. While that one's cooling, you can move to the next one. Lefty on top of righty, just to keep everything straight again. And just like that. I'm going to finish this out and get a couple of bases ready, and I'll be right back. Alright, so since we had little cubes of a left on a right, and a left on a right, and a left on a right, then you can just take them and start stacking, and you never have to worry about orienting them again because you've always put the left on top. So take that left, put it on top of that right. Actually, in this case, I'm taking a right and putting it on top of a left. Press that, hold it for a second. Now keep in mind, foam keeps the hot glue hot for quite a while, so sometimes you have to hold it for a little bit longer than you expect. But it's still a pretty simple and quick process. The right's on the bottom, the left is the one left. That's going to keep them opposite. Then you put some on the top. Flip that over. Make sure you're centered. And press that on. Sorry if my hand's been in the way during half this demonstration. And then, while it's upside down, a little bit on the bottom. That's going to be that lefty on the bottom. A little bit of glue on there. Get rid of those strings. Flip it upside down. Line it up. Press it down. And that's it. Your pillar's done. The whole process, if you're not sitting here trying to explain it to a camera, I could make 10 or 20 pillars in a half an hour, 40 minutes. Once you get it done, that's it. Now this foam, when you get it in this thickness, is already essentially a stone gray color, so you don't have to paint it. But you can. I'm going to show you some different colors that you can do, and I'm going to show you how you can make it a little more intricate. Let me get a couple of things straightened up, finish these pillars up, and I'll be right back. Alright, so I got all 6 of those completed. They've all got a top cap, a bottom cap. You can tell which is the bottom because it's got the groove on it. It doesn't really matter. You can put it that way if you like the texture, or put it that way. Most likely I'm going to put them that way. I've got 6 of those completed. That whole process to complete all of those from where you saw last to this took about 12 minutes, including a change of glue sticks. Alright, let's talk a bit about paint. You can leave them just the base gray color depending on what color they come in. These are a little bit lighter, and sometimes the gray is a little bit darker. And you can just go with the base gray coat like this. This has no paint on it. This is just a plain base gray. It looks great if you're going for stone or dungeon motif, anything like that. Then I put a light gray, just spray paint. I didn't do anything special to these. This is just a light gray spray paint, and I wanted some of that dark showing through, so I hit it really lightly. I didn't really douse it with the gray. So as you can see, there's a lot of the dark still showing, including in these grooves. I haven't washed these or anything. So there's a light gray or mid gray one. Then I hit this same one with the light gray base, and then I hit it again with some white, and it gave it this lighter texture. This looks a bit like a granite or something like that. Now this turned out a little silvery, which is strange because it's a white spray paint. It's not silver. You could certainly make these silver if you needed a metallic one, or if you like in a dwarven mine and you wanted them to look like they were made out of an ore or silver, something like that. You could hit them with a white if you needed like an ivory tower. So that's the white over the gray base. This is a tan with no base. This is just a straight over the gray, sort of a mid-brown a light brown over the solid gray base. And it comes out fairly dark, but you can still see that it's clearly a brown, but this is one of the lighter browns. This is the same brown, just barely dusted over this gray base. So this is gray with brown dusted over it. And as you can see, all 3 of those turned out unique and with a different bit of character to it. So it just depends on what motif you're going for. Then again, I've got a darker brown, no base, just straight into the dark brown. The lighter color down here is because I had these sitting near each other when I sprayed them. And then this one's the one with no base again, just so you can have a comparison on each side. So that's the different colors that I've got, and you could hit these with a sponge technique, or you could dabble with a rag technique, or you could go full on and get some brushes and hit them with the different styles and make like you would do a stone cliffside, anything like that. So you can, there's a lot of options, but here's some of the examples of the different colors for you. Alright, these seem fairly simple. It's basically just a column, but you have lots of different options with them. You can have base cap. You can have top caps. You can have just bases and no top cap. You can have them that are just a solid column with no base or top on them. You can leave them plain, smooth, like a solid stone slab on the tops and bottoms, like these two are. You can put patterns in them. I use this one because I think you can see that one best. You can cut patterns into them or heat patterns into them to make it look like the brick goes all the way to the top, and then you have like just a center capstone. You can make shorter ones that are blocky and chunky. You can make smaller, thinner, more delicate ones, and you can have them where they've got tiered top and bottom caps so that there's a little more intricacy and a little more design flair to it. If you put a cap on it, that tends to show that it's either a platform or that's as tall as the room is. So if you have your figurines like that and you've got a couple of these, that gives the impression that that's just the height of the room. But if you want it to look like there's a lot more elevation and the roof is sticking way up higher, then you can use the ones that don't have a top on them, and that way it looks like the room might actually be much taller if you needed like a large cavern, like the Dwarven Caves in Lord of the Rings, that sort of thing. You can have just no top to the pillar, and it gives the impression that the roof goes up and up. All right, and then three other little things that you can do just for style effects. You can take some of your pieces, just make sure to alternate them, get them right, and you can make little cubes like this, and that way it's a little platform if you need it, or it'll fit sideways, and so you can just have different little blocks that you can use different ways and stack. Here's an example of a smaller one, a little bit thinner foam, so that even though this is 3 and this is 3, you can see the difference in the heights, I think, if I get it in front of the camera. And you can do things like this one's a 3, this one's a 3, this one's a 2, and this one's a 1. You can make them little stair steps so the figures, your characters, can walk up. You can even offset them, so perhaps they have to make a dex check to jump to the next one. You could do the same thing with several of the taller pillars, to where perhaps that's just how rough going it is. They would put it there as an impediment so that people would have to jump to make it. Or perhaps there used to be a bridge or arches across here that have fallen down over time. These could be used as ruins. So there's all sorts of different options to it, and you can even do things like use the same techniques and make much larger ones. Now let's talk scale for just a second. Again, these are 1.5 inches across. That's going to make this approximately a 6-foot wide base with a 5-foot thick pillar. That's a pretty thick pillar when you look at it compared to the size of a person. But you can go much larger. This one here is 2.5 inches, so this is about 10 feet wide and would make a great dais. You could have your people be on it. You could, I'm just going to use this as an example, you could have an altar on it, and then you could have a priest standing behind it. You can make this taller if you need. You could build steps into it and build a platform with steps to it. But it's all using the same technique. So many options. It's all up to your imagination. All right, I'm going to wrap up, clean up here, and I'll be right back for a final wrap up. A couple of quick messages in case you don't stay around after the jump. Thank you for joining the channel. Please check us out on social media. Like, share, and subscribe. And if you don't stay till the little wrap up, we'll see you next time. If you do, I'll see you in just a second. So, you still with us? There you are. Great. I hope you've enjoyed it. Showed you how to build these pillars today. As I said, the style and design and color, limitless. Up to your imagination. So, sit down in an afternoon, spend a couple hours building these up, and they'll last you for years, give you lots of enjoyment on your table and your games in the future. I hope you enjoyed what we're bringing you here at Campaign Terrain. If you do, don't forget to check us out on social media. Some links down underneath in the description, plus on the card at the end of the video. There'll be some the same links, so you can get them from there, as well as a couple of links to some other videos from us. If you've been enjoying what you've been seeing, please make sure to check us out there as well. Once again, this has been Campaign Terrain. I'm your host, That Guy Cross, and I love y'all, and I will see y'all next time.